Today, we are covering 8 major breaking developments that are reshaping the balance of power in the Middle East and beyond. First, Trump declares the United States is already moving to control the Strait of Hormuz. Second, the Houthis open a new front in the war, with the potential blockade of Bab al-Mandeb on the table. Third, Iran's Revolutionary Guard threatens American university campuses across the Middle East. Fourth, the Pentagon prepares for weeks of limited ground operations inside Iran. Fifth, U.S. and Iran talks may happen in Pakistan within days. Sixth, the Kremlin says Washington has put forward interesting proposals to end the war in Ukraine. Seventh, a Saudi oil tanker passes through the Strait of Hormuz as shipping remains severely disrupted. And eighth, Zelenskyy accuses Russia of providing satellite intelligence to Iran to help target American military bases. This is March 29, 2026. Here is what is happening right now. In an interview aired this Sunday on Israel's Channel 14, President Donald Trump made a statement that immediately sent shockwaves through energy markets and diplomatic channels around the world. When asked whether the United States would be capable of taking control of the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most strategically vital choke points on the planet, Trump did not hesitate. He said, "Yes, of course, that is already happening." Those 4 words carry enormous weight. The Strait of Hormuz is the narrow passage between Iran and Oman through which roughly 20% of the world's traded oil flows every single day. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and then to the open ocean. Whoever controls it controls the economic lifeline of energy markets from Asia to Europe. Trump also confirmed that coordination with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on all matters related to Iran is, in his words, as good as it could be. He added that he believes Iran wants a deal very much, noting that any country being, as he put it, decimated, would want a way out. The war between the United States and Israel against Iran has now entered its 5th week. Since February 28th, U.S. and Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 1,340 people inside Iran, including the then Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Iran has retaliated with drone and missile attacks against Israel, Jordan, Iraq, and Gulf states hosting American military facilities, causing casualties, disrupting aviation, and rattling global commodity markets. And here's where things get even more complicated, because while the world is watching the Strait of Hormuz, another choke point is now being discussed in urgent terms: the Strait of Bab al-Mandeb. On Saturday, Houthi military spokesman Brigadier General Yahya Sari announced the group's first direct attack against Israel since the war began. On Sunday, he confirmed a second operation using cruise missiles and drones and warned that operations would continue until Israel, in his words, ceases its attacks and aggressions. The Houthis, who effectively control the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, the 29-kilometer-wide passage linking the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden, have not yet imposed a blockade, but they are not ruling it out. Mohammed Mansour, Deputy Information Minister of the Houthis, stated Saturday that closing Bab al-Mandeb is among our options. An unidentified Iranian military official had earlier told the Tasnim news agency that Iran could open a new front at Bab al-Mandeb if attacks on Iranian territory continued. Elizabeth Kendall, a Middle East expert and president of Girton College at Cambridge University, described this scenario as a nightmare. If restrictions tighten simultaneously at both Hormuz and Bab al-Mandeb, she warned, trade with Europe could be severely disrupted or paralyzed entirely. Approximately 10% of global trade and a significant portion of oil and gas shipments move through Bab al-Mandeb every day. Analysts at the International Crisis Group suggest the Houthis are acting in deliberate coordination with Tehran, holding the blockade option in reserve as a negotiating tool rather than deploying it immediately. Iran's Revolutionary Guard issued a stark warning this weekend targeting American educational institutions in the Middle East. The Guard claimed that recent U.S. and Israeli strikes damaged two Iranian universities, including the University of Science and Technology in northeastern Tehran, and warned that American university campuses in the region could become, in their words, legitimate targets, unless Washington formally condemned those attacks by noon on Monday. The statement, first published by the Fars news agency, which is closely linked to the Revolutionary Guard, urged faculty, students, and nearby residents to stay at least 1 kilometer away from those campuses. Institutions potentially in the crosshairs include Texas A&M University in Qatar and New York University in the United Arab Emirates. This marks an escalation in Iran's rhetoric that extends beyond military infrastructure and into the realm of civilian and academic facilities, a line that, if crossed, would dramatically alter the nature of this conflict. On the ground operations front, the Washington Post reported Saturday that the Pentagon is now actively preparing for weeks of limited military operations inside Iran. These plans stop short of a full invasion but could include raids by Special Operations Forces and conventional infantry, strikes against Karg Island, a critical Iranian oil export hub in the Persian Gulf, and incursions into coastal areas near the Strait of Hormuz to locate and destroy weapons capable of targeting commercial and military shipping. Around 3,500 additional U.S. troops arrived in the region aboard the USS Tripoli on March 27th, joining the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, along with transport aircraft, attack fighters, and amphibious assault assets. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt clarified that no final decision has been made by the president, noting that the Pentagon's job is to prepare options and maximize flexibility for the commander-in-chief. Officials quoted by the Post estimated that the objectives under consideration could take anywhere from several weeks to a few months to complete. Separately, reports from the Wall Street Journal and Axios indicate the Trump administration is weighing the deployment of up to 10,000 additional troops to the region. Yet even as military preparations accelerate, a diplomatic track is quietly taking shape. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar announced Sunday that Islamabad is ready to host and facilitate direct talks between the United States and Iran in the coming days. The announcement followed a meeting in Islamabad among the foreign ministers of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt, all focused on de-escalation. Dar confirmed that both Iran and the United States have expressed confidence in Pakistan's role as a mediator. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres both voiced support for the initiative. Sources cited by the Wall Street Journal recently reported that Trump has told advisers he hopes to end the conflict within weeks, and on March 28th, Vice President J.D. Vance stated publicly that Washington does not intend to maintain a long-term presence in Iran and that operations will last only as long as necessary to neutralize the threat. Shifting now to Ukraine, because this conflict does not exist in isolation. Kremlin Foreign Policy Advisor Yuri Ushakov said Sunday that Washington has put forward a series of proposals on ending the war in Ukraine that he described as interesting and even useful. However, Ushakov cautioned that none of these proposals have been implemented yet, and added that the United States has the ability to pressure and influence Kyiv. This comes after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy publicly stated that Washington has conditioned security guarantees on Ukraine withdrawing its troops from Donbass. A move Zelenskyy warned would hand Russia strong defensive positions and endanger both Ukrainian and European security. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called Zelenskyy's characterization a lie, saying guarantees would only take effect after the war ends. Zelenskyy pushed back again at a press conference on March 28th, saying, "The largest part of the iceberg is not visible." On the energy markets front, a Saudi oil tanker identified as the P. Aliki, carrying approximately 650,000 barrels of Saudi crude destined for Pakistan, successfully passed through the Strait of Hormuz on Saturday, taking the northern route through the narrow channel between Iran's Larak and Keshem Islands. Bloomberg tracking data shows that 6 other vessels also transited the strait that day, including 2 liquefied petroleum gas tankers and 4 bulk carriers. However, overall shipping traffic through Hormuz remains significantly below pre-war levels. Iranian-linked tankers continue to move through the strait with their transponders switched off. The average flow during the first 23 days of March stood at around 1.6 million barrels per day, a fraction of the roughly 21 million barrels per day the strait handled before the conflict began. Thailand confirmed Saturday it has reached an agreement with Iran to secure safe passage for Thai tankers through the strait. And finally, President Zelenskyy dropped a serious accusation Saturday night, claiming that Russian satellites photographed American military installations in the Middle East at Iran's request, providing targeting intelligence ahead of Iranian strikes. He cited specifically the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, which was photographed by Russian satellites on March 25 and then struck by Iranian ballistic missiles and drones in the early hours of Saturday, injuring at least 15 American soldiers. The base sits roughly 96 kilometers from Riyadh and had already been targeted twice earlier that week. Zelenskyy also said Russia captured satellite imagery of a joint U.S. and U.K. military facility in the Indian Ocean, Kuwait International Airport, and infrastructure at the Greater Bergen oil field, as well as bases and oil facilities in Turkey and Qatar. The Kremlin denied sharing any intelligence. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas made similar accusations last week. Zelenskyy also sharply criticized the U.S. decision to grant a 1-month sanctions exemption to countries buying Russian oil, a measure designed to cushion the economic blow of rising energy prices caused by the Iran war. He called the situation strange, noting that sanctions are being relaxed while Russia allegedly provides targeting support for attacks on facilities belonging to the very countries granting those exemptions. What you are watching unfold on March 29, 2026, is not a contained regional conflict. It is a multi-layered crisis in which the U.S. and Iran are exchanging blows militarily while Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, and China push for a diplomatic exit. Russia is entangled through its support for Iran and its ongoing war in Ukraine. The global energy system is under simultaneous pressure at 2 of its most critical choke points, and a ground operation by the most powerful military in the world may be weeks away. The question that no analyst can fully answer right now is whether the diplomatic window in Pakistan will open fast enough to prevent a further escalation that could make what we have seen so far look like a prelude. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Where do you think this is heading?